Well, this week marks 5 years since the murder of Oakland journalist Chauncey Bailey. He was shot and killed by members of Your Black Muslim Bakery while investigating the organization. The violent saga is now legendary. Many suffered at the hands of Yusuf Bey Sr., the group's leader. One victim provided testimony of sexual abuse, violence, and welfare fraud, which ultimately led to Bey's arrest. Previously known only as Jane Doe No. 1, Kowana Banks has gone public. Her story was first reported by Louise Rafkin of the Center for Investigative Reporting.
Arrested, and my stepmom couldn't take care of us. We ended up at the bakery.
And now I'm joined by Kowana Banks and Louise Rafkin. Welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you so much for having us.
Why don't you start by telling us how you ended up in foster care at the bakery?
I ended up there because my father was arrested for whatever charge he was arrested, and he couldn't take care of us. So he took us to the bakery so that Yusuf Bey and his wives could take care of us.
And when you say us, who was us?
I was accompanied with my sister as well as my brother.
I see. And Louise, how did you become involved in this story?
Well, I watched the story like everybody did, but I also live in the neighborhood, and I own and run a martial arts school that's in the former school and the complex where Yusuf Bey had his bakery and his school. Although Kowana told me that when we met, I learned a lot more about the building.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what happened once you were placed in foster care there.
Well, let me see. It was a pretty grueling environment, pretty strict. I wasn't allowed to go to school. I wasn't allowed to go outside of the bakery's environment at all. I was somewhat held captive like a slave. Worked long hours from 5 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, and had to do exactly what I was told to do and nothing more.
But weren't you a child?
I was a child who reached out to the foster care system, actually the worker, and let her know what was going on, to see what she was going to do about me not going to school and me working long hours. And I never seen the social worker again.
Did she know about the abuse that was going on there?
She did not know. I was waiting to, in fact, see what she was going to do about me not going to school and working long hours. I wanted to see if I could trust her, because I had already reached out to some of the Bey wives and didn't get any help. Explain
the Bey wives.
Well, I went to a couple of the wives and told them that Yusuf Bey was trying to do things to me. And Nora Bey, the foster mom, told me that he wasn't going to do anything to me that he hadn't done to anyone else. And basically let him know that I was reaching out for help.
At what point, Louise, did you learn what was going on behind the scenes?
Well, I think I had read what I'd seen in the papers, but I felt like in the reporting about the mayhem and the murders that the women's stories were really lost. And so I talked to Kowana on the phone after a chance meeting, and from there we talked for hours and hours, and you know, really learned a lot more about what the situation was. I think it was sort of clouded in the media as wives and children, but not really given a face. And I think when I met Kowana, she was so inspiring, so positive, that I couldn't believe that her story hadn't been really told with a face attached. And I was really honored to meet her and be able to tell her story.
How many years were you the subject of abuse there, and what happened to you during those years?
I was there from the age of 10 until 20, and in those years I gave birth to 3 children, starting at the age of 13, the second at 15, and the last right before my 18th birthday. So I was really settled there because I had no family to fall back on, you know, and people asked me, you know, well, why didn't you leave? And I asked them, you know, well, where was I going if I did leave? You know, where was I going? I was a child myself with children, you know. So once I started having children, I realized that I had to taper down how I felt about living there, because I didn't want them to do anything to my children, to harm my children in any way.
Well, Did you go to authorities? Do you know why there was no police or social service involvement in?
Actually, I did. Well, I was in the neighborhood and I talked to my beat cop and they told me, you see nothing, you know nothing. And, you know, and partially I think they wanted to protect me from the violence that was really around us, and I understand that, but I was a little bit shocked that nobody really chased that down.
Were you afraid then, and are you afraid still?
Yes, ma'am. I was afraid then. If I wasn't afraid, I think I would have came out a lot sooner. It was because of the fear of me living there and seeing things take place there that I knew I wasn't safe. And I did try to stress that with the Oakland Police Department, just how dangerous it was in there and what would happen. So once it all started happening, was I surprised? No.
What now that you've come out and people have seen you, what do you think is ahead? Would you think something is going to happen with officials in Oakland, or even what is ahead for you personally?
Well, for myself, you know, I am publishing a book. I am writing a book and looking for a publisher. I have opened up a foundation for Jane and John Doe Foundation for Abused Children, and I'm looking to make that grow so that when another child like myself is in a predicament that I was in and they need some place to go, they would have some place to go where they can get counseling, where they can get housing and help with, you know, pursuing the person that hurt them.
Thank both of you for joining us.
Thank you.